It's time for the Holei Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome to the Holei Fantasy Football Podcast. Today is Tuesday, October 28th. We just wrapped up a Monday night football game and wrapped up week 8 of the NFL season. As you can see in the title of the podcast, today is a Waiver Wire episode, the most important time of the week apart from the games on the weekend and Thursday. In terms of what's going to be on this episode, we will start with a Monday night review of the Chiefs' win over the Washington Commanders. We will then get into some NFL news. Then we will hit the waiver wire and then wrap up with the final results of the Holei League for this week. So let's get into it. Monday Night Football review. The Kansas City Chiefs at home take down the Washington Commanders 28-7. As a Commanders fan, expected result, expected it to kind of go the way it did in terms of final scoreline being as lopsided as it was. The game kind of played out interesting for the defenses. A lot of turnovers to start that game. 2 interceptions in the first 9 pass attempts for Patrick Mahomes. One of them his fault, the second not his fault at all. Marcus Mariota also had an interception early that was not his fault, and just an interesting game to see play out from that first quarter. There were some great and there were some dud fantasy performances in this game. Patrick Mahomes, despite the 2 early interceptions, still finishes with 25 fantasy points. Almost 300 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, 30 yards on the ground. As I've said before, and we've seen this year, Patrick Mahomes has a very good chance of finishing in that top 3 to 5 QB on the season due to the rushing upside he's had this season. Marcus Mariota finishing with 12 points on the day. Running back situation, so confusing for the Washington Commanders. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt finishes with 2.5 fantasy points on 25 yards rushing. A lot of burn in that first half. Did not see him much in the second half. Jerry McNichols ends up being the beneficiary of the Commanders' backfield. 5 catches, 64 yards. He finishes with 11.8. Chiefs running backs. Rashad Smith, who I said for the rest of the season think he could have a breakout, does not get that much burn. He fumbles. He finishes with negative 0.2 fantasy points. Pacheco, the volume's there. Just 12 carries for 58 yards, though. Not an impressive game. And Kareem Hunt. Though it seems like at times they try to phase him out, he will always be that goal line running back. He had 40 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown, as well as a 2-yard touchdown catch for 17 fantasy points. Pass catchers for this game. Terry McLaurin, 3 catches, 54 yards and a touchdown. Nice to see him back in the end zone after the injury. Very nice touchdown catch. Also a very nice deep diving catch on the sideline in this game. Deebo Samuel, very disappointing day, only 4 fantasy points. Luke McCaffrey with 5. For the Chiefs, Rashee Rice with a solid 24-point day. 9 catches, 93 yards and a touchdown. Xavier Worthy had 5 for 53, and that's about it for their receivers. Travis Kelce with a very big day, looking like Travis Kelce of old. 6 for 99 and a touchdown, 21 fantasy points. As I alluded to in yesterday's podcast, Zach Ertz with Marcus Mariota is not a good mix. Zach Ertz only finishing with 5 fantasy points. That's it for week 8 of the NFL. We will move on to news around the league for this upcoming week. And here we are into NFL news for the week. The most important headline in terms of fantasy: Saints to start rookie quarterback Tyler Shuck over Spencer Rattler versus the Rams in week 9. As I said yesterday, I don't think and have never thought that Spencer Rattler was the problem for the Saints. Tyler Shuck, who is a rookie, is still older than Spencer Rattler, who's been in the league for multiple seasons now. But I guess the Saints want a fresh new start for the offense. He will make his first career start on Sunday, and he's expected to remain the starter over the rest of the season. Does that change anything in terms of Saints players? Not really. I mean, the Saints offense hasn't been a good one fantasy-wise all season. It might change who Shuck is going to target. Maybe this makes it a lot bit better or worse. Same thing with Shaheed and Juwan Johnson. Something we'll just have to see after week 9 and gauge that for the rest of the season. Not really an important for starter or injury news. But one thing that I think is important to note is Dave Canales, who is the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, quote, said, "We cannot ignore Rico Dowdle's impact in terms of the Panthers running back distribution." That's important to know for Rico Dowdle. Obviously, he only had 8 carries this week for 54 yards. Very efficient, but not a ton of carries. It seems like they're going to try to make this more of a 50-50 going forward. I believe Rico Dowdle only had 36% of the snaps this week. So going forward, Chuba and Rico should be a play You might have limited ceilings for both, but you should have a consistent floor for both of them. A few things to know in terms of the trade front. The NFL trade deadline is coming up in the next few weeks. Jets running back Breece Hall is a name that we've heard a lot for most of the season. Jets are continuing to get trade calls for Breece Hall. He is in the final year of his contract. The Jets have made it pretty clear they don't feel like they want to pay him and rather go a different route. So in terms of monitoring that for fantasy perspective, Breece Hall had the good week last week, and he may end up being a better or worse play depending on the new situation he finds himself into. Something to monitor. Another trade interest player is Raiders wide receiver Jacoby Myers, NC State legend. It seems like his time in Vegas has been long over. He requested a trade in the offseason. He's been playing regardless, despite the trade request. It'll be interesting to see if any team is willing to take a stab on Jacoby Myers. Another important piece of fantasy news is John Harbaugh, Ravens head coach, expects Lamar Jackson to play this Thursday against the Dolphins. Lamar's been dealing with a hamstring injury over the past few weeks. They have the short week against the Dolphins on Thursday, so it seems like he will suit up despite the whole practice fiasco he had last week. Carson Wentz, quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, will have left shoulder surgery and will miss the rest of the 2025 season. We saw on Thursday Night Football that the Chargers absolutely crushed this man for 4 quarters of football. He's out for the season. J.J. McCarthy is still not fully healthy. He is expected to play for Week 9 this upcoming week, but expect the Vikings to either trade or sign a veteran quarterback. Names to watch: Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson in New York will probably be the most realistic. Even a chance of Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. I don't think that changes anything for you fantasy-wise. It seems J.J. McCarthy will be fine going forward. Something to keep an eye on. And finally, for news for this week, Tyler Lockett, Seahawks legendary wide receiver, on the Titans for a while as well, was released last week. Tyler Lockett has signed with the Las Vegas Raiders. Again, off of the back of the Jacoby Myers trade interest, this could end up being a fantasy-relevant move going forward. We'll have to see. Tyler Lockett has not really been a huge fantasy relevant player over the last few seasons. He is not a run after catch guy at all. He's a catch and fall down. So you may be able to get some PPR upside with him in the Raiders. We'll just have to see how he is used. That's it for news this week. Now it's time for the fun part. Let's get into the waiver wire.
The Waiver Wire.
It is time for the waiver wire. How this will work is we'll look at each position group, players that are available to be picked up in each position group for the upcoming week. In the Holei League, we are in a 14-man PPR league, so our waiver wire is a lot thinner than the average league. So how I will do it to keep this league or this segment a bit more available for other leagues, the standard 10 to 12-man leagues, is we will look at any player under 50% rostered for each position group. And then we will also take a look at more thin waiver wires, such as what we have in the Holei League. First up, we have quarterbacks. Now, there are bye weeks and there are injuries that you need to think of and keep up with when you are thinking of quarterback streams. Players that are under 50% rostered in most leagues that you might be able to give a crack at. You have Justin Fields. As long as he's playing, there's a chance with his rushing upside that he can be relevant for you. Apart from that, Aaron Rodgers is under 50% rostered. The Steelers' offenses look pretty coherent with him at the helm. So he's somebody that you can pick up and play on any given week. Trevor Lawrence is someone that's available in most leagues. Trevor Lawrence isn't a world beater. He's a pretty average tier NFL quarterback. Sam Darnold, somebody who is available in a lot of leagues. He has looked good this season. The Seahawks passing offense has looked good this season. He's somebody that you can plug and play for sure. Now, apart from that, Tua, you had the great Tua week last week. I don't know if Tua is someone that you can consider going forward as an every week play. He has 10 interceptions on the season. Michael Penix, Kirk Cousins is not the answer. Michael Penix has had flashes of greatness, some tough games as well, so that's someone you can also keep in mind. J.J. McCarthy, I would check and see. He's meant to be coming back this week or next as a fantasy play going forward on the rest of the season. And apart from that, there are not really any other great quarterback streams. You could take a flyer on a guy like Shedeur Sanders. I think Dylan Gabriel isn't the long-term solution, and I could see Shedeur possibly getting some burn late. You always have Mac Jones available. He's been solid, and he's pretty pretty low in terms of total rosters across fantasy football. Apart from that, though, the guys you have rostered, a lot of people are rostering 2 quarterbacks. You can really make those start decisions. And most of the time, those are just made for you based on bye weeks and injuries. Waiver wires are made by the running backs, wide receivers, and even tight ends that you add in a week. Quarterbacks are often just streamer pickups unless there's like a quarterback like Daniel Jones who wasn't drafted that's having a very, top 8, top 10 quarterback season. Running backs, this is the most important for you. Some players that are kind of hovering around 50% rostered that you want to just make sure that you have. Kyle Monungai is getting burned. Even with DeAndre Swift has dealt with some nagging injuries. So Kyle Monungai, running back for the Chicago Bears, is someone I would just make sure in your league isn't rostered. He is rostered in the Holei League. Tyrone Tracy Jr. is going to probably be the top ad. If you listen to any sort of podcast of waiver wire ads this week, with Cam Scadaboo going down, he inserts himself as running back 1. His ceiling is incredibly low compared to what Cam Scadaboo had, but he's going to have a baseline of volume that you'd want to chase. He is rostered in Holei League, but he's only rostered in about 41% of leagues. So if you're in any other league that you need a running back, I would take a look at Tyrone Tracy. Now, apart from that, anyone else that you might want to take a look at? Dylan Sampson outscored Quinshon Judkins this week. He's a rookie running back from the University of Tennessee. They play the Jets this upcoming week. He's rostered in only 11% of leagues. If you need that stab, again, that Browns and Patriots game played out in an interesting way. I'm not exactly sure what that means long term. Quinshon Judkins did have an injury in the Patriots game, and the Browns have a bye this upcoming week, so that Jets matchup is actually week 10. So that's more of a stash play. Unfortunately, in the running back department, a lot of the best ads this week are all on bye this week. Isaiah Davis, running back for the Jets. Tank Bigsby, running back for the Eagles. And as I said too before, Dylan Sampson. All of those guys are on bye this week, so that makes it tough to justify rostering them when you know you're going to have a week that you can't play them. In terms of players who are playing this week that you could possibly pick up, Samaje Perine had a 17-point game last week. There's a lot of offense in that game. I don't know in terms of is that going to sustain past just this week. The Bears against the running backs in fantasy, so they offer up a decent amount of points. Devin Neal, rookie running back from Kansas, who is with the New Orleans Saints. Alvin Kamara seems to be aging out. He's battling with an injury, and he's also someone that could be traded. So if you need someone that you want to have the roster spot for in the long-term investment, Devin Neal is someone you could definitely consider. And last person I'll bring up is Emmanuel Wilson, running back for the Packers. He seems to have established himself as the clear backup running back in this offense, and he would just be a good handcuff for Josh Jacobs if he were to ever go down. Unfortunately, in this part of the season, it's getting a bit scarce on the waiver wire. And so all of those guys aren't really going to come in and play for you at all. Tyrone Tracy would be the best one if he isn't rostered in your league to grab. But this is not like those first few week ads where these guys you were able to pick up and play some of these guys. You're getting into the dirty, a little nasty pickup players that you might not necessarily like, but might have value for you in leading weeks down in the season. Wide receivers, under for 50% rostered that you just want to make sure that you might have on your roster. Troy Franklin, wide receiver 1 last week. He's only rostered in 38%. Trey Tucker, he had the big boom game against the Commanders with the Raiders. Marquise Brown is someone I think is kind of getting phased out of this offense for the Kansas City Chiefs with the return of Rashee Rice. In terms of that, there's some other players. Kayshon Boutte, big boomer bust player for the Patriots. He can have the big games, he can have the duds, but if you need a flyer in terms of points, he's somebody you could look to pick up, only rostered in 25% of leagues. Other players, Alec Pierce, he is the deep threat for the Indianapolis Colts, only rostered in 17% of leagues. And, he's not going to get a ton of targets. He has, though. I think he had 10 targets the week before last. But he is really their deep threat guy. Malik Washington, receiver for the Dolphins. He's their wide receiver, too. They have a lot of trick and gadget plays that they run with him in the offense. He is only rostered in 16% of leagues. In terms of players to also might you want to add, Chimere DK, rookie wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans, has had back-to-back really good weeks as their wide receiver 1. He's had 16.4 PPR points at least in the last 2 games. Calvin Ridley, injured in both of those games. He's kind of not been relevant to their offense. He's also a trade candidate. So Chimere DK, only rostered in 14% of leagues, is somebody you could definitely look at. Darius Slayton, Again, not a player that has a ton of upside, but he's a consistent player in this Giants offense with Malik Neighbors, who's been out for a while. Someone to definitely consider picking up. Christian Watson, if he wasn't picked up in your league, somebody I would definitely consider. Immediately comes back in off the torn ACL with 4 catches for 85 yards. I think he is the wide receiver 1 in this offense, so if he is available in your league, he's only rostered in 45% of leagues, somebody to pick up. Jalen Noel, who I misspoke on Friday or Monday's podcast. Holden actually did take a stab on him and rostered him, and he had a solid week on Sunday. He's somebody that if he's available in your league, rookie wide receiver, to take a look at. This upcoming matchup against the Broncos is a little tough. They're third against wide receivers in terms of fantasy points allowed. Calvin Austin is someone that you can consider as well, wide receiver 2 on the Pittsburgh Steelers, rostered in 29% of leagues, and the Colts defense actually allows the 30th points to wide receivers, so a good matchup for him. And that's really it for wide receivers. As I alluded to with running backs, it gets a little nasty at this stage in the season with trying to pick up players to roster and even possibly play. Tight ends to consider picking up for the waiver wire. Number 1, I would say that's realistic, is Cade Otton, tight end for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has been a beneficiary of the Chris Godwin and Mike Evans injury. He's a solid play each week. Dalton Schultz has put it together decently for the Texans this season. Mason Taylor, he also had the touchdown this week. Their rookie tight end that they seem to want to get involved more and more. Colson Loveland's somebody, a highly drafted pick for the Chicago Bears. You have the roster spot and you want to take a flyer of somebody who could win your league toward the end of the season. If he gets involved in that offense, like I know the Bears want to involve him, he could be a good add. In terms of other tight ends, Jawan Johnson, not rostered in over 50% of leagues, had the really good start to the season in weeks 1 and 2, and then he had a stretch of bad games where he was injured, and now he has been solid the last 2. Obviously, we know the change at quarterback with Tyler Shuck coming in instead of Spencer Rattler. We will have to see how that plans out, but if you need a plug-and-play tight end in your league, Jawan Johnson is definitely one of them. Gunnar Helm is someone you can also take a look at the tight end position. He caught a touchdown this week, rookie tight end from Texas for the Tennessee Titans, rostered in pretty much no leagues. Chigon Konkwo is somebody who was involved in some trade talks, tight end for the Titans. If he were to get traded, Gunnar Helm could be a decent play going forward. Obviously, it's hard to trust players on the Titans offense, but that's somebody if you want to take a flyer that you can. In terms of some defensive streamers this week, the Detroit Lions against the Vikings, we have no idea who is starting for the Vikings this week. That's a defense I would be interested in picking. Same thing with the Rams defense versus the New Orleans Saints. Great matchup, solid defense. And then the Jaguars defense against the Raiders is also another one to consider. Obviously, the Raiders offense has not looked good this season, and so that is another defense that you could stream this week. And just quickly, we're going to go over some of the waiver wire ads specific to the Holei League of players who are available. Brock Purdy, who's still, rolled out last week, is looking that he could play this week or next week, is somebody who should be rostered. Jared Goff is also somebody who should be rostered, both available in the Holei League. In terms of running backs, we talked about Samaje Perine. Michael Carter is interesting because he was actually released by the Cardinals yesterday, but now there are reports that they're going to bring him back, and it was a procedural thing. I don't know exactly what that means, but Michael Carter is involved in some capacity. It seems like Bam Knight is for sure their running back 1. Devin Singletary, now the running back 2 on the Giants with the Cam Scatterboot injury. He has a level of volume that's going to be there, but he is behind Tyron Tracy Jr. We've talked about Emmanuel Wilson and Devin Neal. Bishal Tootin, fine play, rookie running back. It seems like Travis Etienne is the running back 1 there for the time being. Jeremy McNichols is the receiving back for the Washington Commanders. If you need a decent play at running back and you're in a pinch, he is getting all the receiving work. Ollie Gordon had a good week last week, got a 20-yard touchdown catch. Somebody, if you need a running back play, that you can certainly play, rookie running back for the Miami Dolphins. In terms of wide receivers available in the Holei League, Olamide Zaccheaus, 7 targets, 7 catches last week. He has a baseline of decent play. Parker Washington, weirdly enough, the Jaguars must love Parker Washington because he is pretty involved in that offense. Apart from that, it gets a little thin in our waiver wire. You have Romeo Wilson, who led the Steelers in receiving last week. You have Jaden Higgins, wide receiver for the Texans, You have Xavier Hutchinson, who led the Texans last week in receiving as well. Pat Bryant, who caught a touchdown last week. All of these guys that you try to go off of last week's, and you might be happy with the next week, but the likely chances is that they're not going to be able to reach that performance again, and that they will end up disappointing you the week after. Tight ends available in the Holei League. Jonnu Smith, he's a solid play, was really good for the Dolphins last year. He's used in the offense, not a ton. Same thing, they just have 3 relevant tight ends with Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth, and Darnell Washington, so that's tough to take a flyer on those. Gunnar Helm, as I mentioned previously, rookie tight end for the Titans. If you need one you could pick up. Isaiah Likely, he's still getting eased back from this injury more and more, and it seems like each week Mark Andrews is losing it more and more. So if you need a flyer pick, Isaiah Likely is one to consider. In terms of defenses, as we talked about, any defense playing the Titans, which this week is the Chargers, you might want to look at. Ravens versus the Dolphins is another defense you could play. Jags versus Raiders, and so on and so forth. That's probably the 3 in the Holei League I would be targeting the most. And yeah, that wraps it up for Waiver Wire. Obviously, going into week 9, the Waiver Wire is not as fancy and, good looking and being able to change your team as it was in previous weeks, but knowing that still there are moves to be made in these waiver wires that can help you win your fantasy football championship in the future. So that's it for the Waiver Wire. We are now going to get into a quick wrap up of the matchups this week in Holei League. As I've said all yesterday and today, Chase takes me down 171 to 131 to get his second win on the season. Martin defeats Nathan by 2 points exactly, 125.6 to 123.6 to get his 5th win. Patrick takes down Eric to improve to 4-4. Will, who I had mentioned on Friday's episode, very unfortunate this season, gets a dominant win to get his 2nd win of the season. Ben with a close 3-point win over Holden to improve to 6-2 on the season. Nate takes down Lucas with a dominant Tucker Craft performance to improve to 8-0 on the season. Lucas falls to 0-8. And then Dustin with a dominant 55-point win over CJ to improve to 5-3. In terms of the standings, that puts Nate in first at 8-0. Ben in second, Holden in third at 6-2, Martin in fourth at 5-3, Dustin in fifth at 5-3, myself in sixth at 4-4, Patrick, Rory, and Eric also following in 4-4, Nathan and CJ at 3-5, and then Will and Chase at 2-6, and Lucas at 0-8. In our 14-man league, the top 6 teams make the playoffs. So as I listed, those top 6 seeds would be in the playoffs as of today. To wrap up the episode, we will be doing a Thursday night football preview. Again, this will be tough to forecast injuries because there's a few days in between Thursday night and today. This episode is going up on Tuesday, but we will try our best to do a quick preview of that before, and then we will review that on Friday. Our Thursday night football preview, which is the Baltimore Ravens traveling to the Miami Dolphins. Ravens at 2-5 and the Dolphins at 2-6. As I said in the news earlier, Lamar Jackson is expected to play. I would expect that the Ravens are heavily favored to win this game, as I will check right now. But Lamar Jackson opens up this offense tremendously compared to Cooper Rush or Tyler Huntley. Ravens are 7.5 point road favorites, so they are definitely heavily favored in this game. Lamar, talking about must starts in this game, Lamar, Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, Zay Flowers, Jalen Waddle, players you can also play in this game. You could try to ride and see how Tua does. I wouldn't count on Tua to put 2 good weeks together in a row. Malik Washington is someone I'm definitely interested in playing for the Miami Dolphins. And you could take a stab on a Mark Andrews play. That's really it for this game. Ravens defense would definitely be a better play than the Dolphins defense. And yeah, that's it. We'll see if Lamar doesn't have the same thing he did last week where it looked like he was going to get played and then he got ruled out. Because as of now, he is expected to play for this game. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Holei Fantasy Football Podcast. 2 days in a row. Monday, Tuesday episodes for you. Next episode will be on Friday. We'll be going over the Thursday night football result, as well as previewing the Sunday games, and we'll take a little look onto Monday as well. If you have any start-sit questions, you have 2 players that you are in between, feel free to comment those or to message those if you have my direct contact, and I can do a little start-sit segment on Friday about deciding between which players you might want to start in your lineup or keep on your bench. Thank you so much for listening to the Holei Fantasy Football Podcast. Have a good one. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Holei Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for the latest episodes.